So some of you might already know this. I actually don't know if I've told anyone, but whenever I'm not doing these YouTube videos, I like to build PCs and flip them, specifically gaming PCs. And this is no different. This is the beginning of a gaming PC right here. And basically the story behind this is originally I was going to flip this Alienware Aurora that my friend gave me as part of a trade deal, but the Alienware Aurora absolutely reeks of cigarette smoke, and I've tried for like 2 days to get rid of the smell. Nothing I've tried seems to have worked. It's not as strong as it used to be, but it's definitely still there, and I don't think anyone would really want a PC that smells like cigarette smoke. But the final nail in the coffin for me to go ahead and remove the motherboard and just get rid of the case was that the power supply in it, I think, is on its last legs. Basically, on the back of the Dell power supplies, there is this little green LED to show that the power supply is on. It never turns on, and whenever you try to turn on the computer, you have to press the power button at least like 3 or 4 times before the computer actually turns on. Now, that could either be an issue with the front panel connector for the power button, or the issue with the power supply, because whenever I short the pins, it turns on every single time first try. But if it ends up being the power supply, I might as well just go ahead and put it in a new case if I'm gonna have to go through the effort of replacing that. So we're gonna be building a new gaming PC here. This is gonna be kind of a chill, relaxed video if you want to have this, I don't know, playing on a second monitor while you're doing something, or just listening to it in the background. It's gonna be kind of just a chill video of me building this. I think it's like a $200 gaming PC. But before we go over all these parts, let me show you the old Alienware case. So this is it right here, and again, I got this Alienware free because of a trade. So this thing just still reeks of cigarette smoke, even though I've tried like 2 days to get rid of it. Anyways, even if I got rid of the smoke, I don't think I'd actually reuse this case. The power button is just it's either the power button or the power supply, because for whatever reason this thing takes a bit of effort to actually get it to turn on. And when I pulled it out of storage this morning after getting back from vacation, this thing was completely dead, and I had to reseat the CPU to get it to turn back on again. It was just a whole thing, so I'm just saying screw it, putting it in a new case. We're making it a custom build instead of an Alienware. And I tried to sell it as an Alienware, but it didn't seem to get that much interest online anyways, so hopefully a much modern case will do the trick. But this power supply down here is, I think, what the real culprit is, but there's just so many cables and connectors, I figured I would just rebuild the whole computer from scratch in different case. Also, the water cooler is going out as well. The pump doesn't turn on most of the time, so as soon as you get into Windows, the CPU throttles immediately to 100 degrees, and you have to sort of unplug and plug back in the computer, restart it a few times before the pump actually kicks in. I replaced the rear exhaust fan because it was super loud. This is it right here. Like, look how big this thing is. I'm sure this thing is great for airflow, but like, it is super loud. And so I cut like the noise of this computer in half by just replacing that fan. But that fan I'm gonna have to take back for myself, and then the rest of this is probably just gonna scrap. I'm sure if I kept trying I could get the smell out, but I've already decided, screw it, I'm gonna go and do a new build. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the new parts. So now let's talk about the components that this PC is going to be using. So let's start off with the CPU and motherboard. So the motherboard is obviously the Aurora R2 motherboard. Thank God it's standard, because the newer Alienwares do not have a standard motherboard. And we also have a standard CPU, the Core i7-8880. For some reason, these sell for a ton of money on eBay, considering how old they are. And I could, if I wanted to maximize my profitability, I could resell all these components individually, but I decided to put it together in a build because I like building PCs more than just flipping parts. So we have the i7-880, we have the Alienware Aurora motherboard with its I/O shield, which I'm glad could be. We have 8 gigs of DDR3 RAM. So this RAM has green LEDs up top, and depending on how much load the computer is under is how fast they flash. It's really weird and almost annoying. But next, for the storage, we have a 120 gig Samsung A40 EVO SSD. This I picked up for, I think it was like $8. I got it with a lot of hard drives, and I think it came up to being about $8 per drive. And then we have a 500 gig Seagate hard drive that originally came with the Alienware. So technically got the hard drive for free, got the motherboard for free, and got the CPU for free, and the RAM. Now we are missing a cooler, as you might notice, and that's because the cooler hasn't arrived yet. So I'll pull up a picture of it, but it's just a generic like RGB CPU cooler off Amazon. This case doesn't have any RGB controller built in, so just having to be static rainbow is perfectly okay by me. And I was originally going to get one of those dirt cheap like RGB coolers off eBay, but I decided to spend the extra $5 or $6 to get a tower cooler that will hopefully cool much better. For the graphics card, we have a GTX 760. I paid $71 for it, which was probably too much. This was a deal I got. It was two 760s, I think, for like $150 or somewhere around there, and it also came with an SLI bridge. So I sold the SLI bridge for, I don't know, $10, $15, however much it was. And now I'm stuck with two 760s for $71. I got rid of one of the 760s in the build, but now I just gotta get rid of this one. So this is a 2 gig 760. It's nothing special. And I actually used to own a 760. My first PC was an X58 like HP workstation, and it had a GTX 760, but mine had the cut down 1.5 gig version. It's really weird. 760 is really weird. There's a 1.5 gig version, a 2 gig version, and a 3 gig version. It just doesn't make any sense. As for the power supply, we have my favorite place to get power supplies, EVGA B-Stock, and this time they hooked me up with the EVGA 450BR. Now, no, they didn't send this out to me, but that's what I'm making it sound like. Anyways, so this is the EVGA 450BR. I think it went on sale a couple weeks ago for like $18, and this is a decent step up over the W1 and W3 PSUs that are commonly on B-Stock every single week. And I have plenty of those, don't worry. So we're going to be using the 450BR. 450 watts should be enough for a first gen i7 and a GTX 760. And finally, for the case, we have the Antec DP301M. This went on sale recently for an insane $28 after a mail-in rebate. And this is my first time dealing with mail-in rebate, and I know now why a lot of people don't like them. But anyways, this is my first time using an Antec case, and for, I think it was like $31 after tax. Definitely way nicer than the DIY PC cases. But I am going to be adding in a 120mm fan to the front. This is actually a Corsair fan that came from the H6D water cooler that I replaced the fan on with an RGB one. So now I have this Corsair fan lying around I'm going to put up front. So enough talking, let's get to building. So I'm just going to be building this gaming PC, just kind of chill at my own pace, and you can watch that if you want, but I assume that you will. So let's start with the build. Alright, this build is starting to come together. I was going to do a time lapse of me cable managing it, but I feel like it would just take way too long for me to do it while filming, because for some reason whenever I film, things take twice as long to do. So I'm going to cable manage this, and next time you see this build, it'll be all cable managed. So it's been a few days, and you might be noticing that there's quite a bit missing from this build. Well, remember in the beginning when I said that I was originally doing this swap because the power supply in the Alienware offed itself? Well, it turns out it wasn't the power supply, it was the motherboard. Motherboard is just completely dead, doesn't do anything, and I guess it decided that it didn't want a second chance of life. So I ordered this replacement motherboard. This is an Intel something or other, and This is a downgrade, believe it or not, from the Alienware one, because we only got one 4-pin now instead of an 8-pin, and we have a much worse VRM, so this poor motherboard is going to have probably a hard time trying to handle this i7-880. So, this was the cheapest one that I could find at $35, and I'm not including the price of this into the build because that Alienware motherboard wasn't supposed to die. It worked perfectly fine forever until, I guess, up until recently. And the people I bought this from forgot to send the IO shield. So now, not only did we downgrade the motherboard, but we're downgrading on the aesthetics because there's going to be a big giant hole in the bottom right in the back. There's going to be a big giant hole because the IO doesn't start until like halfway down. So it's just going to be just a big gaping hole right here. And believe it or not, the cooler still hasn't arrived. I don't know what's taking so long. Ooh, I'm wearing a white shirt and pants, whatever. But the cooler still hasn't arrived. It's arriving tomorrow, so I'm just gonna install this motherboard for now, and if those people don't send me the IO shield, then I guess we're just gonna have a big hole in the back. So, I got a confession to make. I filmed this thing over a month ago, and I kind of forgot that it existed, and I sold the computer before I could even take, like, any final shots of it. So, I do have a picture of it that I can show on screen. I completely forgot that I filmed this video, and the computer is long gone now, so I do apologize for that, but I do have benchmark numbers, however, so let me show you those real quick. And again, I apologize for completely forgetting that I made this video and selling the computer before I even was able to finish filming it. So I guess it looks like that I'm gonna have to buy a new microphone, which is just great. That's something I definitely wanted to do. So I do have benchmarks saved for this computer, and I was gonna go and kind of talk a little bit about how each game runs on the system that I tested, which was Fortnite, CSGO, Minecraft, and GTA. But honestly, you probably don't want to hear the hissing noise from my microphone for too long, so I'm just going to run through these very quickly. So in Fortnite at 1080p competitive settings, we got an average of 100 FPS. Now, there was some stuttering whenever you first jump out of the good old battle bus, but that's pretty much how it is on most systems anyways, unless you have a really high-end one, so that's not too big of a deal, but the stuttering goes away once you're on the ground. This is definitely very playable at competitive settings, and if you wanted to step up to medium settings, you would get an average of around 80 FPS. Next game is CSGO, and this isn't the footage from the computer, because like I said, I sold the computer before I could even get any footage of the games on it, but this is just a compilation of me being absolutely cracked at this game. So at 1080p low settings, we got an average of 110 FPS. Definitely not great if you're trying to play competitive, but if you're just playing casually, this will probably be a good enough of an experience for you. So as I'm recording with this microphone more, I'm realizing that the hissing is getting louder and I'm getting quieter. So I'm just going to use my phone for now. So next is Minecraft 1.8.9, and at 1080p with 8 chunk render distance and fancy graphics, we get an average of 120 FPS. Now Minecraft can run in a potato, so it's no surprise that it's running very well here, but it is a good thing that this computer can run Minecraft. And finally, the last game that I tested was GTA 5, and at 1080p medium settings, we got an average of 60 FPS. This is definitely the sweet spot, as you definitely want to play GTA 5 at 60 FPS, and running GTA 5 on lower settings at 1080p still looks pretty good in my opinion as well. Also, this is a pretty funny clip that I'm showing here. And that's pretty much it for this. I know the video got kind of sloppily put together towards the end, but I mean, I guess this is what happens when I start filming. I forget about it for a while, then I sell the item that I'm supposed to be filming, and then now I just gotta kind of work with what I got. So if you were wondering how the build went, it went pretty well. I only injured myself twice, one on the IO shield, and one on the CPU cooler, the generic RGB CPU cooler, which, by the way, I will be buying more of those because I really like them, actually. The RGB looks good on them, and they're actually not that ugly of a CPU cooler, and it cooled the i7-880 pretty well. Pretty sure it stayed in like the low 60s under full load. But I managed to injure myself because I was trying to take off the fan and my finger slipped across the heatsink fins and put a nice few cuts on the top of my finger, and it bled pretty badly. But that's all I got for this one. I have 2 more videos in the works that I don't know if I'm going to be able to do now because I might need a new microphone, but I might just use my phone because that seems to have a pretty good mic anyway. So that's all for this one. I'll see you in the next video.